Car thieves are using ever more industrious and clever ways of making money or depriving owners of the car that they've saved for and that the family rely on. We're not just seeing the theft of cars anymore, we're seeing the theft of components on cars. In this video, we're going to look at some of the typical thefts of components, why these are being stolen, what manufacturers and we can do to prevent these items from being resold on the black market, and how we can protect ourselves from this insidious threat. With adaptive cruise control and radar sensors, these are very expensive parts on a car. If you went to your main dealer to replace it, you'd be looking at a cost of about £1,500 to £2,000, sometimes even more than that. And these systems are generally on the front of the car. In the case of Volkswagen, they are generally just behind the Volkswagen badge. So it's not surprising that thieves are trying to steal these, because it takes only minutes to whip off the badge, cut the wires and rip these expensive sensors out. And then they're trying to sell them on the black market. And this is affecting a lot of car manufacturers because these sensors are put in very accessible places. They need to be at the front of the car, obviously, but there's very little restriction to easy removal of these items. Some manufacturers have incorporated them more in the bumper, so there's a bit more work required, but that's even not deterring some of the more determined thieves. So what can we do? Well, when we park the car, let's avoid those isolated places. If there's a decent amount of footfall and traffic, that would be a deterrent to the average thief. If we report this item as stolen, we'll need to notify our insurers that there has been a loss on the vehicle, even if we're not planning to claim on it, which is a bit unfair, but they can come back and bite you when you don't disclose these facts and you make a claim in the future. But by notifying the police, in the case of some manufacturers, these parts are specifically coded to the vehicle, and to fit them to a new vehicle, they again have to go through this coding process. And because each of these devices or sensors has a unique ID, it can be disabled. Now, a lot of drivers don't know this. They don't report it. They'll just go out and buy a replacement and get that fitted. Or in many cases, they will just live without it. They'll have a hole in the front of their grille where the sensor was, and they live without cruise control because it's not a life-changing feature that they're now missing. But just taking that action, it will close down the used part market for these items. And if there's no market for them, there's no money to be made. And it should hopefully deter people from stealing these items. And the same thing applies to many of the other items. Mirrors are not just fitted with glass now. They've got heaters, they've got proximity sensors, they've even got little LED indicators to warn the driver that there is someone behind. And it costs a lot of money to replace these mirrors. But again, they're just bolted on to the outside of the car and can be removed in minutes. If there's a used part market available, people will try and steal these and sell them on that used part marketplace. Catalytic converter thefts are also soaring, although steps have been taken to make that harder. In the US alone, in 2018, 1,300 catalytic converters were stolen. By 2020, this has risen to 14,342. And in 2022, it was estimated there were over 150,000 catalysts that had been stolen from cars. The catalyst is in the exhaust, and manufacturers used to just bung it under the car. And all the thief had to do was cut two little bits out of the exhaust and remove the catalyst. And they've then got this expensive part that they can resell. It generally got sold for scrap because of the precious metals inside it, and would be quite lucrative for the thieves because they'd only spent a few minutes doing this. But in real terms, it's costing the owners thousands to get these items replaced. And you've got families that are without a car just because someone has tried to make a few quid on the side. Manufacturers are moving catalysts to the engine bay. They're harder to get at. They're combined now in the headers, the downpipe that comes from the engine, and they're also incorporating the particulate filter in these zones as well. It makes the engine bay much more cluttered, but it does make it much harder to steal these items. It's no longer a 5-minute job. They've got to get the bonnet open, they risk setting off the car alarm, and it's a bit more conspicuous doing this than it would be just sliding under the car and making those few snips in the exhaust. People buying these catalytic converters for scrap are now required to make sure there is a documented trail of the source for these items, so they're not buying these stolen items. They're genuinely scrapped catalytic converters that are being sold for scrap. And in the main, this, in the UK at least, has reduced the risk of thefts of catalytic converters. There are still a few brands, particularly on older hybrids, they're seeing quite a high percentage of catalytic converter thefts. Car cannibalism has also been in the news recently, where cars are just parked at the side of the road and they are stripped for parts. You'll see a car with no lights, no front bumper, no bonnet, components have been stolen out of the engine. These thefts take place very, very quickly. It doesn't take a gang of thieves very long to get to a car. And again, it's key to park the car in a well-lit public area where there is a decent amount of footfall to keep the car alarm engaged. And if we're aware of spates of thefts in certain areas, just avoid those areas. Let's not give these thieves an opportunity to make a quick buck and create an inordinate amount of inconvenience for us and for our family. Another thing that we can do to prevent the theft of car parts is not buy car parts from dubious sources. Go to reputable companies with a reputation on auction sites rather than these people just selling parts from their garage. The guy down the pub that's got a cheap catalytic converter for sale, don't touch that with a barge pole, because we're basically feeding these criminal enterprises. If they're getting money for these parts, they will keep stealing them. And that's going to keep costing us and our fellow motorists an inordinate amount of money over the years. Let me know if this issue has affected you or a family member, what you did about it, how inconvenient it was to have these items stolen from your car. And please boot that like button, that really does help us to get out there. If you've not subscribed to the channel, please do so. And I've lined up this video and this playlist that you should find really interesting. Thanks for watching. See you in these next videos.